I never thought my life would fall apart over a bowl of leftovers, but that's exactly where everything began. The night my daughter-in-law got promoted, she took my son and my grandchildren to a rooftop restaurant to celebrate. They dressed up, they laughed, they posted photos, and they left me at home alone in the kitchen. Hours later, while I was heating soup for myself, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her, "Heat up the leftovers so they don't go to waste." A minute later, another notification arrived, this time from my bank. They had paid for their entire celebration using my credit card. That was the moment something inside me shattered, and something else woke up. By the next morning, I had vanished from their house, leaving behind only a letter and the deed proving the home they lived in legally belonged to me. Before I tell you what happened next, would you have walked away? My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 69 years old, and I live or used to live in a quiet suburban home on Northwood Avenue, just outside Portland, Oregon. At least that's what everyone believed. What they didn't know was that I was slowly being erased inside that very house. The night everything snapped began on a Friday. It was early spring, the kind of evening when the air still smelled like rain and the sky couldn't decide if it wanted to be blue or gray. I was in the kitchen wearing the same floral apron I'd worn for 3 years, stirring a pot of chicken noodle soup while the dishwasher hummed behind me. Upstairs, I could hear my daughter-in-law Chloe clattering around trying on outfits. She had been promoted at Northwest Retail Solutions, and my son Daniel was taking her and the kids out to celebrate. Or rather, they were taking each other out to celebrate. I was never part of these plans. Not for birthdays, not for milestones, not even for casual Fridays. "Mom, we'll be late," Daniel called from the hall. His voice used to brighten when he said Mom. Now it sounded more like an apology. I peeked around the corner just in time to see them. Chloe wore a fitted black jumpsuit, one I had steamed for her that morning. She looked radiant, her silky blonde hair curled into waves, red lipstick flawless. Daniel stood behind her in a navy button-down I had ironed an hour earlier. The children, Mason and Ella, bounced near the door, their shoes already on. "You all look wonderful," I said softly. Chloe smiled one of those polite, tight smiles you give a stranger at a grocery store. "Thanks, Evelyn. Don't wait up, okay?" She didn't have to say it. She never did. "You guys have fun," I replied, pretending not to feel the sting. They walked out the door. I heard laughter keys jangling the engine of Daniel's car starting, and then silence. A silence that filled every corner of the house I helped them buy. A house I had poured $250,000 into after selling the home I'd shared with my late husband for 4 decades. A house they called theirs, even though my name was the one on the deed. I microwaved leftover noodles for myself. I ate standing up looking at the family photos on the fridge, pictures of holiday school concerts, pumpkin patch days. I had been the one taking those photos. I was in none of them. A small notification buzzed on my phone. A message from Chloe. "Heat up the leftovers so they don't go to waste. No thank you. No hope you're doing okay tonight. Just instructions." As if I were the nanny, the maid, the afterthought. But what cut deeper wasn't the message. It was the bank notification that popped up moments later. Chase alert, a purchase of $320.40 was made at Skyline 52. Rooftop steakhouse on your card. My card, my credit, my money. They were celebrating Chloe's promotion on a rooftop overlooking the whole city using my credit card after telling me to stay home and warm up leftovers. The pot on the stove stopped simmering. Something inside me did too. I stood there gripping the counter, letting the realization settle. I wasn't family in this house. I was convenience. For 3 years, I had woken up before sunrise to pack school lunches, cleaned bathrooms and folded laundry, paid utility bills they assumed Daniel covered, cooked dinner 5 nights a week, watched the kids so Chloe could manage her team from her laptop, covered repairs, yard services, and groceries because it was easier that way. And through it all, I told myself I was helping my son's family. I told myself this was what good mothers did when their children needed them. I told myself Chloe would eventually soften, that Daniel would notice how much I carried on my shoulders. But that rooftop steak dinner broke something that had been cracking for 3 long years. I walked upstairs to my room, the smallest in the house, the only one without a lock, and opened the cedar box, where I kept the things that were still truly mine. Inside it were the deed to the house, mortgage statements, proof of every payment I'd made, an email from the bank officer, and a little blue USB drive containing voice recordings I'd started saving months ago. Recordings of Chloe talking about me when she thought I couldn't hear. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the weight of it all settle into my bones. 3 years of being unseen. 3 years of shrinking to make everyone else comfortable. 3 years of swallowing the truth because I didn't want to be a burden. But that night, something inside me finally stood up. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't send an angry message. Instead, I whispered to myself, "Evelyn, you're done being small." And with that, I pulled out my suitcase. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I finally understood something I should have realized sooner. If people only keep you around because you serve them, they don't deserve you. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you if you think Chloe went too far, type 10. And if you want to know what I packed in that suitcase, just say next. The suitcase I pulled from my closet was old soft brown leather, worn at the edges, the same one my husband and I used on road trips when we were still young. Back then, we filled it with picnic blankets and maps. Now I filled it with my silence. I folded clothes with a calmness that felt unnatural, almost frightening. When a woman stays quiet through humiliation for long enough, the moment she stops caring about being quiet, she becomes someone else. Someone sharper, someone honest. I placed my clothes in the suitcase, then my books, then the framed picture of my husband, his smile soft, the kind of smile that made you feel safe. "I'm sorry," I whispered to him. I should have left sooner. While packing, my eyes kept drifting to the cedar box on my nightstand. Inside it were my receipts, bank statements, voice recordings, mortgage documents, my invisible armor. I opened the box and ran my fingers across the stack of papers. For years, I kept everything just in case. In case I ever needed to prove I wasn't crazy. In case I ever needed to prove I wasn't useless. In case I ever needed to walk away. I had hoped that day would never come. But now, here it was. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. The numbers stared back at me, payments I had made for repairs, groceries, electric bills, insurance, all the expenses Daniel and Chloe never even noticed. Then I opened the folder labeled "For Later." That was where I kept the audio files. My hands trembled as I played the most recent recording captured 2 weeks earlier. Chloe's voice filled my room. Honestly, having Evelyn here is cheaper than daycare, and she keeps the house spotless. I don't even think she realizes how much we depend on her. Pause. Laughter from someone, maybe her coworker. Daniel thinks we'll put her in assisted living when she gets older, but that's years away. For now, she's useful. Useful. A word for an appliance, a dishwasher, a vacuum, not a person. I clicked to the next file. Daniel's voice this time, soft, nervous. "She's fine, Chloe. Mom doesn't need much. She likes helping, I think." Chloe scoffed. "You're dense, Daniel. She's lonely. That's why she clings. She needs us. Trust me, your mom isn't going anywhere." I closed my laptop slowly. Not because I was angry, but because I finally felt free. When people reveal who they are behind closed doors, it gives you permission to stop pretending. And I was done pretending. I took out a small notepad from my drawer and began writing a letter. The words came naturally, like they had been waiting 3 years inside my chest. When I finished, I placed it neatly on Daniel's pillow. Next, I texted my friend Maggie, who lived in a small apartment downtown. I didn't tell her everything just enough. "Maggie, can I stay with you for a few days?" Her reply came instantly. "Of course, Evelyn. You come anytime, day or night. I'll leave the door unlocked." My throat tightened. Sometimes a single message can save your whole heart. I zipped up my suitcase and carried it downstairs, each step echoing in the quiet house. The living room was dark, except for a small lamp I had turned on earlier. It lit up the family photos along the wall, the photos I wasn't in. Children's drawings taped beside the fridge, a pile of Chloe's work folders on the dining table. Daniel's shoes in the hallway, slightly crooked the way he always left them. It hurt. Leaving hurt more than staying. But staying would have destroyed me. Before walking out, I placed the deed to the house legally in my name on the kitchen counter, with a sticky note on top. This house was built with love. But love should never feel like servitude. Mom, I didn't wait for guilt to pull me back. I locked the door behind me and stepped into the cool night air. The moon was high, the street quiet, except for the soft rustle of tree branches. My Uber pulled up. The driver, a young woman with bright pink hair, loaded my suitcase into the trunk. "Moving?" she asked casually. "Something like that," I said. She smiled. "Well, wherever you're going, I hope it's better." I watched the house disappear through the rear window, the house I had bought, paid for, maintained. The house I was finally allowed to leave. When I arrived at Maggie's place in the Pearl District, she opened the door instantly. She didn't ask questions. She didn't make me explain. She just wrapped her arms around me and said, "You don't deserve to be treated like that, Evelyn. Not by anyone." I cried then, not loud, not messy, just soft tears slipping down my cheeks, tears of relief rather than heartbreak. We stayed up late drinking chamomile tea. I told her pieces of the story. She listened quietly, her hands gripping mine, her eyes fierce. "You have proof?" she asked. I nodded. "A lot." "Good," she said, "because you're going to need it." Her words settled into my bones like a warning and a promise. For the first time in years, I slept deeply wrapped in a blanket that smelled like lavender and hope. But the next morning, everything exploded. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls, messages, voicemails from Daniel, then from Chloe, then from an unknown number. I knew what was coming. Before I tell you what happened when they finally tracked me down, let me ask you something if you think it was right for me to leave Type 10. The calls kept coming. By mid-morning, my phone was vibrating nonstop on Maggie's dining table. 32 missed calls from Daniel, 14 from Chloe, 5 from an unknown number, likely a lawyer, though I suspected not one of theirs. I ignored them all. I sat by the window of Maggie's small apartment, holding a warm mug of coffee in my hands. Outside the Pearl District was waking up dog walkers, cafe lines, cyclists rushing to work. Life moved on unaffected by one mother's quiet rebellion. But my rebellion wouldn't stay quiet for long. Around 11 a.m., the doorbell rang. Maggie looked at me. I nodded. She opened the door, and there stood my son Daniel, breathless eyes, red hair, disheveled, like he'd been running through a storm. "Mom," he choked, "please. I need to talk to you." Behind him stood Chloe, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her face pale and streaked with mascara. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small, almost frightened. Maggie stepped aside reluctantly, letting them in. The moment Daniel saw me, he dropped to his knees right there on Maggie's living room rug. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." His voice cracked on every word. I closed my eyes. I had imagined apologies before polite, shallow rehearsed. But not this. Never this. He looked up at me, tears on his cheeks, and whispered, "I didn't know how badly we were hurting you. I didn't see it. I should have seen it." Behind him, Chloe swallowed hard and stepped forward. And then she did something I absolutely didn't expect. She placed her phone on the coffee table, unlocked it, and slid it toward me with trembling hands. "What's this?" I asked quietly. "A confession," she whispered. "I recorded a statement for HR at my company, telling them everything. The way I spoke about you, the way I treated you, the way I manipulated Daniel, everything." I blinked. Chloe confessing voluntarily. She continued, voice shaking. "I'm at risk of losing my job, Evelyn, but I deserve whatever comes. I was selfish. I used you. I took advantage of your kindness. And I'm ashamed." Silence filled the room. For the first time, Chloe's voice didn't have that sharp, superior tone. It sounded raw, like she'd spent all night peeling away layers of pride. "I grew up poor," she said quietly. "My mother was a housekeeper. I spent my whole childhood being looked down on. I promised myself I'd never feel small again. And when you came to live with us, she pressed her lips together. "I guess I tried to make sure someone else felt small instead of me." Her truth stung, but not in the way I expected. It didn't feel like an excuse, only a wound she had finally stopped hiding. Daniel wiped his eyes and added, "I found your notes, Mom. The deed, the receipts, the recordings. I didn't realize how much you'd carried." I watched both of them broken, humbled, honest, and I realized something. The woman who left that house was wounded. The woman who sat here now was no longer a victim. I had power now, not power to hurt, but power to choose what comes next. The meeting that changed everything. 2 days later, we sat together in a small law office in downtown Portland. Not adversaries, not enemies, just a fractured family trying to figure out how to stop bleeding. Amanda, my niece and my lawyer, led the meeting with calm professionalism, but she kept her voice gentle, knowing the matter was not just legal, but emotional. "Here are the options," she said, placing 3 documents on the table. "Evelyn has the right to 1. Keep the house entirely, which she legally owns. 2. Sell the house and divide proceeds as she sees fit. 3. Establish a shared ownership agreement with conditions." Daniel and Chloe sat up straighter. Their faces tightened. I picked up the 3rd document. Shared ownership, 60% mine, 40% theirs. And strict terms, respect financial boundaries, division of responsibilities, therapy for the family, including Chloe individually. I slid the contract across the table. "This is the one," I said. Daniel exhaled shakily. Chloe covered her face with her hands. They both signed without hesitation. When the final pen stroke dried, I felt a weight lift, not because I had won, but because I had not lost myself in bitterness. That mattered more than any legal victory. A year later, I didn't move back in. Instead, I found a small apartment filled with sunlight and plants. I joined a knitting group. I started volunteering at a literacy center. I lived, not just existed. But Daniel and the kids visited constantly. And Chloe, surprisingly, became a different woman. Therapy softened her. Humility reshaped her. She apologized not once, but through consistent actions. Our relationship would never go back to what it was. But it was becoming something new, something honest. And sometimes, new is better than perfect. One summer evening, little Ella climbed into my lap and asked Grandma, "Are you happier now?" I kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm happier because I finally remembered that I matter too." She smiled, leaned her head on my shoulder, and whispered, "I'm glad you didn't stay gone forever." I held her close. The truth is, I didn't save myself from my family. I saved myself for them. A stronger version of me, one who refuses to disappear again. And that changed everything. Before this story ends, let me ask you if you felt something in your heart while listening, type 100. And tell me, what country are you watching from? If you believe more people should hear stories like this, please share the video.